Uh, Welcome to this session of life skills. I have been discussing about important life skills such as learn negotiating skills, conflict management skills, behavior changes, and stress and emotion, how to solve your problem, creative and critical thinking, problem related to adolescence, conflict management skills, life interview skills, and group discussion, etc. in respect of the life skills that are required for the students. However, I have included in my topic life skills for corporates recently, and I had been telling about personal finance planning, parenting skills, leadership skills, learning skills, presentation skills, numeracy skills, and interpersonal skills, etc., including the latest of the videos in respect of work-life balance, control your anger, and how to be assertive, and body language. And the recent video is on communication strategy. Perhaps if you continuously see these videos, you will have a good number of topics which may be useful to you in improving your career and also your professional life. Today I am going to talk about fear. Fear is an emotion induced by perceived danger or threat which causes physiological changes and ultimately behavioral changes such as fleeing, hiding, or freezing from perceived traumatic events. Fear in human beings may occur in response to a certain stimulus occurring in the present or in the anticipation or expectation of a future threat perceived as a risk to oneself. The fear response arises from the perception of danger leading to confrontation with or escape from avoiding the threat, also known as the fight or flight response, which in extreme cases of fear, horror and terror can be a freeze response or paralysis. In humans and animals, fear is modulated by process of cognition and learning. Thus, fear is judged as rational or appropriate and irrational or inappropriate. An irrational fear is called phobia. Fear is closely related to the emotion anxiety which occurs as the result of threats that are perceived to be uncontrollable or unavoidable. The fear responds survival by endangering the appropriate behavioral responses. So, it has been preserved throughout evolution. Sociological and organizational research also suggests that Individual fears are not solely dependent on their nature but are also shaped by their social relations and culture, which guide their understanding of when and how much fear to feel. Then comes the physiological science. Many physiological changes in body are associated with fear, summarized as the fight or flight response, an innate response for coping with danger. It works by accelerating and breathing rate, hyperventilation, heart rate, vasoconstriction of the peripheral blood vessels leading to blushing, and sunscadenania of the central vessels, pooling, increasing muscle tension including the muscles attached to each hair follicle to contract and causing goosebumps, or more clinically, piloerection, making a cold person warmer or a frightened animal look more impressive, sweating, increased blood glucose, hyperglycemia, increased serum calcium, increase in white blood cells called neutrophilic leukocytes, alertness leading to sleep disturbance, and butterflies in the stomach, dyspepsia. This primitive mechanism may help an organism to survive by either running away or fighting the danger. With a series of physiological changes, the consciousness realizes an emotion of fear. Causes of innate fear. Although many fears are learned, the capacity to fear is part of human nature. Many studies have found that certain fears, for example, flowers, clouds, these fears are also easier to induce in the laboratory. This phenomenon known as preparedness, because early humans and that were quick to fear dangerous situations were more likely to survive and reproduce. Preparedness is theorized to be a genetic effect that is the result of natural selection. From an evolutionary psychology perspective, different fears may be different adaptations that have been useful to in our evolutionary past. They may have developed during different time periods. Some fears, such as fear of heights, may be common to all mammals and developed during the Mesozoic period. Other fears, such as fear of snakes, may be common to all simians and developed during the Cenozoic time period. Still others, such as fear of mice and insects, may be unique or to humans and developed during the Phytolithic and Neolithic time periods, when mice and insects become important carriers of infectious diseases and harmful for crops and stored foods. Learned fear. Animals, humans innovate specific fears as a result of learning. This has been studied in psychology as fear conditioning, beginning with John Watson's Little Albert experiment in 1920, which was inspired after observing a child with an irrational fear of dogs. In this study, 11-month-old boy was conditioned to fear a white rat in the laboratory. The fear became generalized to include other white furry objects such as a rabbit, dog, and even a ball of cotton. Fear can be learned by experiencing or watching a frightening traumatic accident. For example, if a child falls into a well and struggles to get out, he or she may develop a fear of wells. Heights, acrophobia, enclosed spaces, claustrophobia, or water, aquaphobia. There are studies looking at areas of brain that are affected in relation to fear. When looking at the areas such as the amygdala, it was proposed that the person learn to fear regardless of whether they themselves have experienced trauma or if they have observed the fear in others. In a study completed in Andreas, Catherine, nearing the Elizabeth A. Phillips, the amygdala were affected both when the subjects observed someone submitted to an hour's event. Learned fear. Animals and humans innovate specific fears as a result of learning. This has been studied in the psychology as fear conditioning, beginning with Watson's Little Albert experiment in 1920, which was inspired after observing a child with an irrational fear of dogs. In this study, an 11-month-old boy was conditioned for a white rat in the laboratory. The fear became generalized to include other white furry objects such as a rabbit, dog, and even a ball of cotton. Fear can be learned by experiencing or watching a frightening, traumatic experience or accident. For example, if a child falls into a well and struggles to get out, he or she may develop a fear of wells, heights, acrophobia, and enclosed spaces, claustrophobia, or water, aquaphobia. There are studies looking at areas of the brain that are affected in relation to fear. The next topic would be common triggers. Phobias, according to surveys, some of the most common fears are of demons and ghosts, the existence of evil powers, cockroaches, spiders, snakes, heights, trypophobia, water enclosed space, tunnels, bridges, needles, social rejection, failure, examinations, and other public speaking. Fear of the unknown. The fear of the unknown or irrational fear caused by negative thinking, that is worry, which arises from anxiety accompanied with a subjective sense of apprehension or dread. Irrational fear shares a common natural pathway with other fears, a pathway that engages the nervous system to mobilize bodily resources in the face of danger or threat. Many people are scared of the unknown. The irrational fear can branch out to many areas such as the hereafter, the next 10 years, or even tomorrow. Chronic irrational fear has deleterious effects since the elicitor stimulus is commonly absent or perceived from the delusions. Such fear can create comorbidity with the anxiety disorder umbrella. Being scared may cause people to experience anticipatory fear of what may lie ahead rather than planning and evaluating for the same. For example, continuation of the scholarly education is perceived by many educators as a risk that may cause them fear and stress, and they would rather teach things they have been taught them to go and do research. That can lead to habits such as laziness and procrastination. The ambiguity of situations that tend to be uncertain and unpredictable can cause anxiety in addition to other psychological and physical problems in some populations, especially those who engage constantly, for example, in war-ridden places or in places of conflict, terrorism, abuse, etc. Poor parenting that instills fear can also debilitate your child's psych development or personality. For example, the parents tell their children not to talk to strangers in order to protect them. In school, they would be motivated not show fear in talking with strangers, but to be assertive and also aware of the risk and the environment in which it takes place. Ambiguous and mixed messages like this can affect their self-esteem and self-confidence. Researchers say talking to strangers is not something to be wanted but allowed in a parent's presence if required. Developing a sense of equanimity to handle various situations is often advocated as an antidote to irrational fear and as an essential skill by a number of ancient philosophies. Topic would be management. Pharmaceutical, a drug treatment for fear conditioning and phobias via the amygdala is the use of glucocorticoids. In one study, glucocorticoid receptors in the central nuclei of the amygdala were disrupted in order to better understand the mechanism of fear and fear conditioning. The glucocorticoid receptors were inhibited using lentiviral vectors containing recombinase injected into the mice. Results showed that disruption of the glucocorticoid receptors prevented conditioned fear behavior. The mice were subjected to auditory cues which caused them to freeze normally. However, a reduction of freezing was observed in the mice that has inhibited glucocorticoid receptors. Psychology cognitive behavioral therapy has been successful in helping people overcome their fear because fear is more complex than just forgetting or deleting memories. An active and successful approach involves people repeatedly confronting their fears. By confronting their fears in a safe manner, a person can suppress the fear triggering memories or stimuli. Exposure therapy known to have helped up to 90% of the people with specific phobias to significantly decrease their fear over time. Another psychological treatment is systematic desensitization, which is a type of behavior therapy used to completely remove the fear or produce a disgusted response to this fear and replace it. The replacement that occurs will be relaxation and will occur through conditioning. Though conditioning treatments, muscle tensioning will lessen and deep breathing techniques will aid in detensioning. Other treatments, there are other methods for treating or coping with one's fear, such as writing down rational thoughts regarding fears. Journal entries are healthy method of expressing one's fears without compromising safety or causing uncertainty. Another suggestion is a fear ladder. To create a fear ladder, one must write down all of their fears and score them on a scale of 1 to 10. Next, the person addresses their phobia, starting with the lowest number, finding solace in the region. Another method to cope with one's fear. Having something to answer your questions regarding your fears, such as what happens after death or if there is an afterlife, can help mitigate one's fear death, because there is no room for uncertainty as their questions are answered. The next topic would be society and culture. Death. The fear of end of life and the existence is, other words, the fear of death. The fear of death ritualized the lives of our ancestors. These rituals were designed to reduce that fear. They helped collect the cultural ideas that we now have in the present. These rituals also help to preserve the cultural ideas. The results and methods of human existence had been changing at the same time that social formation was changing. When people are faced with their own thoughts of death, they either accept that they are dying or will die because they have lived a full life, or they will experience fear. A theory was developed in response to this, which is called the terror management theory. The theory states that a person's cultural worldviews, religion, values, etc., will mitigate the terror associated with the fear of death through avoidance. To help manage their terror, they find solace in their death-denying beliefs, such as their religion. Another way people cope with their death-related fears is pushing any thoughts of death into the future, or by avoiding these thoughts altogether through distractions. Although there are methods for one coping with the terror associated with their fear of death, not everyone suffers from these same uncertainties. People who have lived a full life typically do not fear death because they believe that they have lived their life to the fullest extent. Fear of death anxiety is multidimensional. It covers fears related to one's own death, the death of others, fear of unknown after death, fear of obliteration, and the fear of the dying process, which includes fear of a slow death and a painful death. Death anxiety is one's uncertainty to die. However, there is a more severe form of having a fear of death, which is known as thanatophobia, which is anxiety over death that becomes debilitating or keeps a person from living their life. Next topic would be athletics. In the world of athletics, fear is often used as a means of motivation to not fail. This situation involves using fear in a way that increases the chances of a positive outcome. In this case, the fear that is being created is initially a cognitive state to the receiver. This initial state generates the first response of the athlete. This response generates a possibility of fight or flight reaction by the athlete, which in turn will increase or decrease the possibility of success or failure in the uncertain situation for the athletes. The amount of time that the athlete has to determine this decision is small, but it is still enough time for the receiver to make a determination through cognition. Even though the decision is made quickly, the decision is determined through past events that have been experienced by the athletes. The results of these past events will determine how the athlete will make his cognitive decision in the split second that he or she has. Fear of failure, as described above, has been studied frequently in the field of sport psychology. Many scholars have tried to determine how often fear of failure is triggered within athletes, as well as what personalities of athletes most often choose to use this type of motivation. Studies have also been conducted to determine the success rate of this method of motivation. Murray's exploration in personnel was one of the first studies that actually identified fear of failure as an actual motive to avoid failure or to achieve success. His studies suggested that in avoidance, the need to avoid failure was found in many college-aged men during the time of his research in 1938. This was a monumental finding in the field of psychology because it allowed other researchers to better clarify how fear of failure can actually be a determinant of creating achievement goals, as well as how it could be used in the actual act of achievement. In the context of sport, a model was created by Lazarus in 1991 that uses the cognitive motivating relational theory of emotion. It holds that fear of failure results when beliefs or cognitive schemas about aversive consequences of failure, for failing, or activated by situations which failure is possible. These belief systems predispose the individual to make appraisals of threats and evidence the state anxiety that is associated with the fear of failure in evaluative situations. Another study was done in 2001 by Conroy and Henschen that created 5 aversive consequences of failing that have been repeated over time. The 5 categories include: number 1, experiencing shame and embarrassment. Number 2, devaluing one's self-estimate. Number 3, having an uncertain future. Number 4, others losing interest. Number 5 is upsetting important others. These 5 categories can help one infer the possibility of an individual associate failure with one of these 3 threat categories, which will lead them to experiencing fear of failure. In summary, those 2 studies that were done above created a more precise definition of fear of failure, which is a dispositional tendency to experience apprehension and anxiety in evaluative situations, because individuals have learned that failure is associated with aversive consequences. The study on fear and the effect on fear, and how to overcome fear, how to avoid fear, how to reduce the fear has been elaborately done with the subject-wise explanations. Hope you would have understood and do appreciate. Please like, subscribe and refer to your friends. Share with your friends. Thank you very much.